Oh, it's working. Good. Wasn't sure. All right. Sounds like a plan. Good morning. Hey, man, we've already got some Dom, some Steve, some Trevor, some Mama Bear. It's good stuff. Good to see you all today. This is a different shot. A different angle. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. That's dangerous. Don't try to deify me. That's scary stuff. I'm just teasing you. But don't. No, I must not be worshipped. I'm not even like an angel shoot. Good morning to everybody. I don't know if you've read the description in the video yet, but I wanted to talk about some interesting things that occurred to me yesterday. After seeing some of the different videos from folks. Dom, may God have mercy on your soul. Because that's a dangerous prospect. All right. No. No churches of big drum. I'm gonna have to stop streaming. I can't allow people to worship me. It's not good. Hey, Chunk. Gerby is licking my feet right now, and Chunk is trying to come up in the stream. All right, let's see here. I'm looking back at some of the chat previous to me getting in there. Yeah, I was trying to get coffee ready, and I thought it'd be done before I started, but apparently no, it's still not. So that's fine. It will be. Here, dear, do you want to come up in the business here for a minute? You want to come say hi? Come on up in here. Oh, she's a sweet puppy. Yeah, it's a chunk. He's right here. You can't probably see him. But he's a good dog. And the girl is a good dog. Yeah. I'm going to talk to the people. I'm going to talk to the bears. Yeah. You should run. There's going to be bears. Poor kid. I accidentally stepped on her paw yesterday. I was trying to get over to the bathroom pretty quickly, and she got underfoot, and her paw got right where it didn't need to be. And I couldn't stop it. But she's all right. I didn't break nothing. You okay? You forgive me? You usually do. You usually do. But I sort of had to leave you last night and go watch other dogs. That probably makes you a little jealous. Yeah. You're such a good puppy. You're a good boy too, Chunk. Oh. No French kisses. No, that's not good. I love dogs, just not their tongue in my mouth. Something about that's less than appealing. You're not a poodle. No French kissing. Even if you were, I don't swing that way. Sure. You have like a massive tongue. Oh, yes. Hi. We show them that you're very polite. You're personable. Okay, can you hop down? Hop down. Dad's gonna go do a stream, alright? Here, hop over here. There you go. Just don't knock over the camera. Gerby's gonna be the camera dog. She's sitting right behind it, watching the stream. That's so funny. Alright. Yeah, I lost the chat. What's happened? Hey, Andrew J, good morning. Kiki, good morning. I don't know. I'm not on Mud Club, so I haven't watched. I wonder if they're not prepping for stuff. I honestly wonder if they're not. I mean, with the Sven computer not being around, I haven't heard more on that. I wonder if they're priming him to do like an infiltration or something like that. You know, and that's just a theory. None of us know. But of course, they're going to want to keep operational security because if they're messing with stuff like that, that's dangerous. I mean, it was super dangerous when they got Jared in it. And you heard both him and Steven talking about it probably, that prior to the whole Antifa thing, Jared was like, I'm not fixing to do this. And Steven was like, you will do this, you know? Like, you have to do this. We're already this deep, right? And he was legitimately frightened to go and face Antifa. But he did it. And he went in there and thank God nefarious plans that were had about that Ben Shapiro appearance were foiled. Let's see here. Oh, thank you. That was my wife's. Who said that? That was Andrew J. Yes, this flag was given to my wife upon her retirement from the Air Force. So, pretty nice. We'd like to have a better place to set it. This is the best we can do at the moment. We're going to get some other kind of shelf to put it on. We don't have that yet. Okay, so yeah, Billy Bear, welcome. I don't recall having seen you here, but Billy Bear doesn't seem to have moderator privileges. You need to check your mod privilege when you come to my. No, I'm kidding. You actually get handed the mod privilege. Billy Bear, welcome to Wrench Life. You are now a mod. You are now rocking on and can say what you'd like to say. That said, as I tell everyone, if need be, a wrenching will occur, and we'll make this, 0 wrenches one day when y'all come in if it gets too stupid. Hopper answers. Steven Crowder's a liar and dust. PD has evidence, or maybe he doesn't pay his employees. Time will tell. Oh, I didn't know about that. Mama Bear. Sven murdered. Gets deported. Let's see. Yeah, I'm way behind reading your things. Let's see here. Hey, do your thing, Kika. I understand. If you take me in the bathroom, I'm not gonna hold it against you. I won't say that I've never watched a stream without pants. I can't say that. You know what I mean? I can't say that I've never been in hangouts without pants, I can't say that hasn't happened. Let's see. I've heard it from a lot of people that he was deported for allegedly murdering and hooked on crack. It was number one. What? What? No, you're not kidding, huh? Wow, that's really awful. Not gay Jared. When's the latest excuse for bailing on it? Well, I see what you mean. That's awesome. It took me a second to put that together, Kika. Okay, I gotcha. I should have picked that up right away. That's really funny. Yeah, but it worked, right? I mean, it kept things de-escalated, right? If you're one guy and you have the potential to be in conflict with like 5 different people, 4 or 5, maybe just say, hey, I got a deuce. That's probably a good idea. Let's see here. You were number 1. Well, Crowder and them or the Antifa are dummies. Kika. I think you meant Crowder. But, or not Crowder. I'm Antifa, excuse me. I think you meant Antifa were dummies. Yes. That's what I thought. At any rate, let's see here. So, on to what I was going to discuss today. I had fun being on Steve Pinder's stream last night. 1911 Bear had a fun show last night for calling in, talking about cannabis. And that was interesting. Had a lot of interesting perspectives. I missed a big chunk in the middle after my call. I was hanging from it, but then I needed to talk to my beautiful lady before we fell asleep, tried to give her a phone call. And all I had up was my phone, so I couldn't keep the show going and talk on the phone at the same time. It made that difficult. But I did get back in there before the end and saw some pretty funny stuff, so you guys cracked me up. It was a blast. At any rate, so Big Bear was streaming yesterday, and he was talking a little bit about Ben Shapiro. He talked a little bit about how Shapiro had been defending Alex Jones, even though he hates Alex Jones, or is not fond, at least. Doesn't care for Alex Jones's perspective and content. Like Piers Morgan tried to lump him in an interview with Alex Jones. And specifically, don't do that. Don't lump me in with Alex. I don't want to be connected to that guy. Kika, you're a teetotaler because you don't smoke pot. Well, I also don't smoke pot, but I'm definitely not a teetotaler because I enjoy my stout, or an IPA from time to time, if it's a good one. By the way, Guinness has a fantastic IPA that's brewed with nitrogen, as I understand it, not carbon dioxide. Makes a huge difference. So good. At any rate, um, so yeah, Big Bear was talking about that with Shapiro, but he's like Shapiro's still like dogging on Alex Jones and calling him a garbage human. Um, Shapiro's defending pedophiles. I missed that. Yeah, I'm gonna have to catch up on that one. I didn't see that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to have to watch. That's weird. I'm just trying to process that. Huh. Oh, you know what? Hang on one second. Chunk, I need your help. There's a cup of coffee. And you know what? I'll just take y'all with me. Y'all are just going to come with me. You're going to come off the tripod. You got my hand in front of your face for a minute. Um, there's coffee to be drunk, so that's kind of a priority. Whew. And it's hot water. I'm using the French press. We're pressing the French. So I fill it halfway. That's per suggestion from my good buddy, Scott. This is how he makes his coffee. Let's see here. And I'll just give it a minute. About 30 seconds, actually. Maybe another 20. So timer, give me 20. Alright, use my microwave timer to give me 20 minutes down there. There's a wonderful collection of. It's not expensive coffee. It's just cheap beans, but this is what I do. I wait for it. Here we go, and very nice. It's about 30 seconds. So get this plunger set right. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. I almost forgot to add the rest of the water. Now, if I do this right. Get a good little bit of foaminess on the top. I'm not a coffee aficionado by any means. Scott is far better than I. He's way more educated about it. He is a coffee schnob, per his own words. Nice and slowly plunge. I haven't used a percolator except when that's all that's available where I'm at. I haven't done it for a while, So. Get a good cup here for those that have a familiarity with Star Trek. So now, I pushed some excess out there. I'm going to leave it for about 3:30. I've already waited about 30 seconds, so I only need about 30 more. Hang on, gotta fix that. Clean up your room. Start with the coffee that you just spilled. Right? Stand up with your shoulders back and clean up the spilt coffee. Good morning. Good morning, Pisky. Was that you that I just saw? I can't see much because I'm holding the phone funny. But here we go. Here's me. All right. So we're going to let that do its thing for about 3 more minutes. And then I'm going to have some coffee. Do I have any milk left? Ooh, I used just the littlest bit of milk. And I'm a fan. And there's some for my beautiful lady bear whenever she shows up home. Is Gita done with her food? Let me check on Gita. Puppy dog Gita, you didn't even eat, silly goof. You have to eat your food. I have to put her in a separate room, I've said before, because she is a pain in the tuchus in dealing with dogs eating. So I have to let her deal with that. All right, now I'm going to put y'all back in and we're going to talk. So here's the deal. Make sure that angle's what we wanted. I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, it's not worthwhile. Let's see here now. So Ben Shapiro, right? Big Bear's talking about this, and he's like, "Look, you're not helping the cause. There's enough of these." He's talking about Shapiro. He's like, you're saying stuff like calling people garbage humans, and then at the same time defending. It's like the garbage human thing doesn't work because people just think you're a male genitalia part, and they're not pleased with um, that. So they may begin, those that are lesser intelligent, may begin to lump you in with a lot of the other Jews that are in Hollywood and in government, um, that have identified as socialist or democratic, almost the same thing these days. Though there's no such thing as democratic socialism. It doesn't really work like that. Only because if they figure that like the majority rules kind of thing happens, and like the people decide, about socialistic things. If that's what they're saying with democratic socialism, I haven't learned how to articulate that as well as I probably should. Dadus. I only looked down at the chat for a moment and instantly, what do I see at the bottom? Adam squirreling. Anyway, um, and I got a dog squirreling with her bark there. So, good job. Now I'm trying to get my train of thought back. I'm gonna get up to get coffee in a minute anyway, so it's gonna help me recenter my thinking. But the democratic socialism thing is what I'm thinking about. If they're figuring that maybe because they get everybody on their side to think that socialism is so great and wonderful, and then it works, it's not really democratic socialism at all. It's Stalinistic communism, because that is essentially, as I'm beginning to dig into the Gulag Archipelago, that's more of what I'm seeing. Is that like in the first few chapters, it's all about like the psychology of what was going on in the minds of the people, like how day to day was for life in former Soviet Union, and it was horrendous. People were almost overjoyed to get taken away, like they were taught to believe so ardently in the state and the cause of a communist society, that they were almost excited to have the secret police come and haul them off. Like they know that the police were in their neighborhood or something like that, and they just sit in their room like it was the worst thing in the world to be anticipating. Am I next? Is that what's going to happen? And people could get taken randomly, right? They didn't have to have done anything, right? The police in different areas had quotas to fill, right? But I remember a couple different instances that I've read so far. So, like one that Solzhenitsyn was relating there was of a woman just being overjoyed, like the wait was finally over, and they showed up to just take her, because she figured it was going to happen sooner. Like, they'd come in the middle of the night and take you right out of your bed in some cases. Pretty horrific. Or in broad daylight, they'd take people, right off the street. In fact, there was a case where a woman was taken, I think at night, first I mentioned, and she had children. She was just taken from her home. And a woman her neighbor went to the police and said, yeah, I want to see what can be done for my neighbor's kids, because they're now without any parents. What are they going to do? And she was just sitting waiting in the waiting room of the police office, and they had a quota to fill. This woman hadn't done anything, but they think, well, she's right here. Hey, we don't have to go out and about. We can take care of it right there. Have a nice time in the prison system. Enjoy. Just ridiculous. But there was a third account that hits my mind, of a woman who was taken and thrown into the system, and she was such an ardent believer, right, in all of that. She'd done nothing. She didn't understand. I don't know if this was the same woman that was in the police station or a different one, but she was such a believer in the system, that her daughter wrote her at one point, now that she was gone in the prison system, and said, Mom, I need to know if you did something wrong, if you did something bad, then I'll hate you forever. I'll disavow you, and I'll have nothing to do with you. But if you didn't do anything wrong, because it's hard for me to get something around my mind that you did, then I'll keep writing to you, and I want to. I'm going to lose my faith in socialism or communism rather. I'm going to lose my faith in the um, the whole thing that we have devoted ourselves to. The mom was so against her daughter losing faith in communism that she wrote back to her and said, "No, I would trade her. That's why I was thrown in here, even though she'd done nothing. Right? She would rather have her daughter disavow her, have nothing to do with her, and keep her faith in communism than to lose it um, based on her being thrown in for nothing." So people were just utterly brainwashed into believing that this was the way. Um, if that's what democratic socialism is, that you're brainwashed into going along with it, so then of course the majority's going to rule. Then and that's the way it'll be. That you will get what the majority wants. Then yeah, that's not democracy in any way, shape, or form. It's just insanity. But yeah. Well, you're right, Kick. Yeah, the crazy liberals, that are far, far left. That's what is happening, as best I can tell. It's history repeating itself once again. It's the same cyclical stuff, right? There was a teacher, a guy who's been a really cool mentor to me, by the name of Bradford Scott. In fact, I would check him out. Here's a book of his that's been a favorite of mine. It's called the Tanakh, the Dictionary of the New Testament, and it takes a look at a lot of different words that are consistently used throughout the Old Testament, or excuse me, the New Testament, and tries to understand their meaning by translating them back through the Greek. Like let's see here, the Old Testament was translated into Greek in about two was it 270 years before Christ. What they call the Septuagint, because there are about 70 different scholars that were involved in trying to get that happening. So some say 72, but we don't really know for sure. At least not that I know of. So this guy is digging into some of these different words that we see in the Greek and the New Testament, trying to understand their contextual meaning from the culture by going back and seeing how the culture used that same term as best you can figure out by going back from the Septuagint and figuring out what was that word this Greek word that we see used in the Septuagint, that we also see used in New Testament passages. What was that word in Hebrew that it was translated from in Hebrew in the Old Testament? If that makes any sense. They're starting with the New Testament word in Greek, and they're saying, what's that same word used in the Old Testament version that was the Greek translation of the Old Testament? Then we can trace back what Hebrew word it was originally brought out from, right? So that's how they do that. And this guy's been cool. He and I actually talked on the phone a number of times over the last few years. Really worthwhile guy. Wildbranch.org. Pretty cool guy. He's been around for a long time, teaching ancient Hebrew. Some people think he's a kook. I would disagree. He's a man. I'm sure he's not perfect, and I'm sure he'd be the first to admit that. But he's been very kind and offering up some good resources. So yeah, he and I had some talks about Hebrew and the fact that Hebrew was pictographic, and each letter has a picture associated with it. Each picture conveys a meaning. So he suggested some resources that would help me understand it better that way. We were talking about this democratic socialism thing, but I was talking on a bigger picture about, or more specifically, I should say it that way, about Ben Shapiro and, oh, you're talking to Honky. Yeah, I hope Honky's getting surfed. That would be fantastic. Okay, so what was it about the democratic socialism that Brad Scott had mentioned in one of his talks? He was suggesting to me and to others that the entire Bible, the seed plot for the entire Bible, could probably be encapsulated in the first 4 books of Genesis. He, in fact, has a study where he goes word by word, verse by verse, through the entire first 4 books, right? and suggests that the entire vocabulary, the entire outplay of um, the Bible is contained in books 1 through 4 of Bereshit or Genesis, or chapters 1 through 4. So once you got that down, you're gonna go. You can go through the Bible and try to understand it or review it with the idea in mind that it'll be the same story, sort of, but new people, new situations. Like, how can they be the same story? Conceptually, right? That conceptually, you're going to see some of the same themes repeated over and over and over again, just in different situations. So, in a sense, history does repeat itself, is his suggestion. We're continually seeing a repetition of the same pattern over and over and over again, and that everything in nature works by repeating the same cycle over and over and over again. There is a verse. This is not my main thing that I wanted to talk about today, but there is a verse in. I want to say it's in Psalm 23, right? That you all may be familiar with. The Lord is my shepherd; I shall not want. He leads me beside cool waters. Makes me to lie down in green pastures. He restores my soul. Um, Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. For you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. I probably skipped a verse there. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. That was the verse I skipped, which I think is verse 3. Um, that verse is what's key there. I'm not looking at it, I'm trying to remember it. But how would I say this? So, in that verse, in Psalm 23, it says, he leads me in paths of righteousness. Usually, when our minds think of a path, we're thinking of like going on a hike in the woods or riding down a bike path or something like that, an actual trail that goes right out in front of us, right? When he's conceptualizing paths, the term in Hebrew that he uses, the root word there is agol, right? Agol. And the term agol is a term of cyclical movement, right? And one of the pictures that was put forward to me to illustrate this term better was when, in an agrarian society such as theirs, they had to harvest wheat. That wheat was sort of inside of a husk. The actual part that they ground for flour was inside of a husk. They do barley and other things like that, but I think it was when they did the wheat threshing. They'd cut out the stalks and everything. They'd bring the heads of grains to the threshing floor, and they would have a threshing wheel, that would actually go and grind the grain. But to turn this wheel, to grind this grain, they'd have to have cattle, right, to help turn the wheel. Imagine like a boat steering wheel, right, but turned flat, like down on the ground. And you imagine in each of the spokes of that wheel, you've got cattle, right? And so you hook them up, you yoke them to each of those handles, and then they will push in the same direction and walk around and make a big circle, and that will cause the threshing stone or whatever to be rolled around to crush the grain, right, more effectively. It's sort of like automation, but it's the animals getting to do it in a sense. Some earlier technology in helping to get agriculture done more effectively. And these cattle, they would have them push the lever or the handles on this big wheel. Eventually, they wouldn't have to yoke them anymore. Why? Because they'd walk it so often that they know, it'd be stuck in their mind that when they do it, they'd actually carve a rut into the ground in this circle that they'd be walking in. It'd be harder for them to step out of that rut than to just stay in it, right? So that was a goal, a cycle in that way. Paths of righteousness harkens to the mind of an ancient Hebrew, or potentially could have. We can't prove that. It's not doctrinal. It's just food for thought, right? For cultural perspective, right? Not telling you this is for sure what this means, but it's, how would I say, probable to suggest that in the mind of a Hebrew, you would hear this verse, he leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. You would hear this agol term, and you would hearken back to this idea in your mind of cattle pushing around a wheel without the yoke, right? No yoke on anymore to connect them to it. They willingly stay in the rut because that's where they need to be to make things happen, right? the more we repeat the things that God had in mind for us to do, I think is one of the lessons here. The more we continue to do those year after year, moment after moment, cycle after cycle, right? Um, the more that we're going to be accustomed to doing them, right? The more that we, through repetition, we get good at repeating those actions. But here, the thing is, whatever you do, that will be the case. It's not going to be just righteous actions from God. Whatever you do, it's demonstrated that that's what happens to us. We repeat those things over and over and over again. The more we do it, the more we're going to be able to do it without thinking. We will carve neural pathways in our brain, in our musculature, from neuromuscular or motor neurons is what I was trying to say. Um, Musicians do this. We get to a point where we don't have to think about how to play our instrument. We automatically do it, and we think about greater details. The weightier matters of playing. Like, oh, what kind of a tone do I want to use here at this moment? We don't think of the song construction as much. We know the songs by that point; they're ingrained. We don't think of how do I do a downstroke properly, or how do I play my paradiddle, or some rudiment. That's we're no longer at that point anymore. We don't have to think about it when we do it. We think about things that help it sound appropriate for the song, and we're free to think of that. Well, Honky Bear, I also suck at spiritual discipline, man. So don't feel bad. Um, Tom, it's no yoke. That puppy has a full bowl of food, right? That puppy is whining because she is my dog, and I love her. But my coffee is done. So give me one moment. I'm not going to take you with this time. Give me two shakes of a puppy's whiskers. Hang on, Don. All right. First off, did you eat? Did you eat? No, you didn't eat. So we're just going to bring you out here, since you're not going to eat anyway. Go eat your food. You two are going to fuss with each other now. All right. So I'm still here. I'm just filling my coffee up, and then I'm going to come join my bears, because that's why I'm here. All right. Coffee time. I get you, puppy. Oh my goodness, that's hot. Here, I'll open the door. Come go as you please. Either eat or go. There we go. Sometimes dogs need a little cajoling to get them to eat their breakfast, which I have trouble understanding because it's breakfast. Why would you not want to eat it? All right, so, hey, Mayor, good morning. I'm going to have some more playing, like musical stuff, in the next couple of days here, but this seemed like a really worthwhile thing. I've sort of been taking my time getting to it. So here's the deal. I want to quickly look up a couple words that seem to be important to me. Let's get back to, let's get back to, let's see now. What Big Bear had to say about Ben Shapiro the other day, and about Jews in general. It's like, don't be making it bad for, how would I say, those Jews that are conservative, that are not losing their minds on stuff. Don't make yourself become a target, right? Don't look too much like the Jews that hate America, that hate the freedoms that we have that are out there, because they exist. They've openly stated this. There are many people that have so done. I'm looking for a particular word here. Let's see here. There's two words, in fact. There's another book that Brad Scott recommended to me. It's called The Etymological Dictionary of Biblical Hebrew. Children, just a moment. Children, choke. Gita. No fighting. That's not going to happen. I'll put. They're play fighting. All right, do it gently. Don't hurt each other. You're fine. By the time you're on your third fur kid, you're just like, whatever. But we love you, Steve, even though you are arrogant at times. So am I. I am chief in the ways of arrogance if I try hard enough. And actually, I don't have to try that hard. I do it pretty naturally if I let myself go. That's kind of what I was talking about yesterday. It's like I'm fully open to being an arrogant jerk. I do a good job if I try. Let's see here. So I'm looking for Aleph, Bet, and Resh. Aleph and Bet. I had this before. It might be prudent to pull up the etymological dictionary. So the Hebrew alphabet, it's a list of pictures, right? It's a list of pictures, and each picture has a meaning, right? And you put meanings together to form words. That's generally how the language worked in times of old, and still often it does at its core, because all the current characters still correspond to their pictures, and that's the way that the concrete basic meanings are formed. So it's kind of like the DNA of communication. This is why I named this stream this today. It's just very, very interesting. And then you can change the meaning of a word by switching letters around. It can mean something totally different, but connected by altering the position of the letters. So I'm looking for Aleph, Bet, and Resh. Let's see here. It's tough when you're not fluent in Hebrew, but you can read it well enough to find things. All right. Aleph, Bet, and Resh. Aber, or Aver. Sometimes the B is pronounced like a V, depending upon the situation, but Aver, I usually pronounce it. It's a B sound, more so if there's a dagesh put in the middle of the letter. And there's no dagesh, a little dot. Let's see. So, Aber, or Aver. Soar above protectively, powerfully elevating, or soaring courage. Some places where you'd see this term Aver are Psalm 76:6 or Psalm 68:31. In Psalm 76:6, that's where you see soaring courage. In Genesis 49:24, that's where you see powerfully elevating. In Genesis 7, or excuse me, Deuteronomy 32:11, you see spread wings, or it's also in Genesis 17:4 and Psalm 91:4. But some other, let's see, cognates of this. There's, let's see here, ayin, bet, resh. So it's done with an ayin. It means the word crossover, right? Some people say it's Hebrew. That's the word Hebrew, or Eber. The root word for Hebrew is one who crosses over. They talk about that a lot of times. That's often done with the ayin, right? But it's based off of this Aleph Bet Resh, right? That's one of those earlier words, soar above protectively. You know, I think I'm getting things confused. I think it was ayin bet resh that I was looking for. Preparation for streams is something that I advocate. I clearly don't do it, but I advocate it. Let's see. I did want ayin because I think that was actually the letter that I'm thinking of, because it has to do with seeing. And ayin, it's the picture of an eye, right? I'm just seeing your guys' stuff. Berean Bible Church is a great website. They have some good stuff there, Honky. Yes, thanks for sharing that. Let's see here. Let me pull up ayin bet resh. I want to go straight to that word because I want to see the cognate of it. I think the other word that I'm thinking of is based off of ayin bet resh, now that I think about it. Forgive me, I'm not fluent in Hebrew, but one day I'll get there. It is pretty incredible. We've had some important people in our country's history that felt it was a worthwhile pursuit to learn it. Ayin bet resh. It's the third, fourth, fifth one down. Cross over to the other side. Move to different condition. Yes, that's the one I was looking for. So, ayin bet resh, or aver, yeah. and that is the word that we get the English word Hebrew from, right? But if you switch those two letters and you have it ayin resh bet, or Arab, right? You have Hebrew, Aver, and Arab, uh, or Arab in Arab, right? It's the same term. It's where we get that monarch. Children, Chunk, you're not going to eat her food. That's not going to happen. This is why we separate them. They have a hard time. Um, yes, it does, Honky Bear. Absolutely, it does, and I'll get into that one of these days. Chunk, why don't you let your sister be? Yes, come here, bud. Yeah, there you go. Chew on the toy. No, no, no. It's knocking my camera down. Hey, shh. Don't knock down the camera. That's Dad's doing a stream. Dogs. Oh my goodness. Um, let's see. Ayin Resh. I might have passed it. No, because it's like at the end of the alphabet. Resh is like the fourth to the last letter. I actually learned the Hebrew alphabet from Barney the dinosaur years ago. Barney the dinosaur was kind enough to teach me. Yeah, chew toy is what he's thinking, Cody. Um, yeah, Barney the dinosaur was kind enough to teach me the Hebrew alphabet years ago. My sister was a big fan of Barney when she was younger, and she had a Barney live at Radio City Theater. Um, Toward the end of that whole performance, this live stage performance they had of Barney the dinosaur, um, it wasn't an episode. It was just a separate VHS that the parents got for. It was a full length, like 2 hour and a half stage show. So and Baby Bop and BJ, her brother, were all in that. And how do I know all this? Because I babysat often for my siblings, and I was required to watch this along with my sister many, many times. Um, to a 13, 14-year-old, that's death. But thankfully, I learned the Hebrew alphabet and didn't realize it for years. I just remember there was a section where Barney sang the alphabet, and then he brought up two other groups of kids to sing the alphabet in French and in Hebrew, right? So years later, I was curious to learn the song, like to learn how to remember the alphabet. It was only about a handful of years ago, and then I came to realize I already know this. The song was there in my memory. I just suddenly awoke in it, and I knew this, right? I had this tucked away all these years and didn't know that I knew it. And Kodiak, feel thankful that you have never seen Barney the dinosaur. All right, So here we go. Thanks to Barney, he taught me. But go out there, learn the alphabet. You don't need to use the Barney version. You can, but it's not necessarily something I'm recommending. All right, so Aver, right? Ayin Resh Bet. Mix substances with no change in character. Penetrate with foreign matter. Mixing without being integrated. Darkening. Being pleasant in some senses that the words can have different nuances of meaning, and nuance is it's an important word in certain cases. Hebrew is definitely contextually based in how you use it, right? So I'm not a linguist. I'm not like trying to establish any kind of doctrine. I'm just pointing out these two particular terms. They're cognates of one another. Instead of it being ayin bet resh, now it's ayin resh bet, right? We've just switched the second two letters around, right? And now the meaning goes from to cross over, right, to endure a situation that was difficult. Is kind of the bigger idea behind that. Let's see here, yeah. Cross over to the other side, move to a different condition, and then ayin resh bet is mixed substances, right, without being integrated. So there's a lot of different interesting usages of this throughout the scripture. One of the things that we find in Genesis, there's a story in Genesis that, oh, you know what, Kikya? I'm probably going to have to watch that then. Kikya, thank you. one of the early stories in Genesis was the Tower of Babel, right? Where everyone was of one language or one speech, right? They spoke the same way. And then at Babel, they wanted to do things that God said, this is not healthy for you. This is not a good thing. Um, for us to congregate in one area, and unite under this. And that's what Nimrod, the first world dictator, was essentially trying to do, was to get people to be congregated, collected in one area where he could more easily have control over them. And build this astrological temple, that they were creating up toward the stars. Not that they were actually going to build it to the stars and get all that high, but that they were going to build this temple that would allow them to worship constellations, worship different heavenly bodies, have interaction with what they believed were spirits and creatures up in the skies. That's my understanding of how that was going on at that point. Well spoken, Kika. Sorry, Gita. My laughter sometimes gets her nervous. She starts barking. There is a better chance of me being Brazil than Barney. Oh my gosh, guys. Half the fun in this is the chat. It really is. More than half, I'd say. So, in this Tower of Babel, one of the first things they said was, "Come, let us bake bricks, and have use bricks for stone," or the word is instead of stone, right? As you translate that back a little bit, they're saying instead of using stone, which is like a building material that has already been created for us, we just have to hewn it out of the rock. Let's take different things and make them together to create bricks, right? We'll mix stuff together, right, to get this other building material that we created, right? We don't have to rely on that God stuff, and we can do it more efficiently. It's quicker to just make the bricks and make it, right? Ultimately, less strong. It's not going to be near as strong as what stone can be by itself. But it's they're wanting to do this stuff under their own power, in their own way, and they're going to mix stuff together to make it happen, right? Sometimes mixing certain things is appropriate, but there's a number of cases where it's not. And this term of aver, right, or ayin bet resh, which we get the word Hebrew from, has to do with overcoming an adversity, crossing over something, an obstacle, whatever it be, without being fundamentally changed, or you move to a different state than you were. That's why I should say that. You are changed, right? You're changed from one state to a completely different one, and you're crossing. It's a transition that is very specific, right? You are clearly transitioning from one way to another way, and the Erev term is to be mixed, right, without being fully integrated. So you intermix with things, and things are kind of indistinguishable. Interestingly enough, it's also the root word of the term for nighttime, right? Boker is morning, right? When things become discernible, when you can tell, like the idea was, Boker was the term they would use to be able to say, oh, this is now when I can tell a man from a woman as they approach, right? I can tell the difference. Of course, that would be harder today, even in the daytime. And Arav was a term for nighttime, right? When things began to get not discernible. You couldn't tell the difference between a man and a woman if they were approaching, just visually, because it was nighttime. You couldn't see as well. The ability to taking light was diminished. Oh my goodness. Kick you. Yep. Mrs. Doubtfire, is that her coming, or is that an actual older lady? I don't know. At any rate, so do some more homework. Chunk is trying to eat Gerby's bowl. I'll have to stop him from that in a moment. And it's about time for me to be done, but take some time, study some of these words on your own. And I also encourage you to take a look at this other book. So I've got the Etymological Dictionary of Biblical Hebrew, based on the commentaries of Samson Raphael Hirsch, and this is done out by Dr. Yahoo Clark. This is a great dictionary tool, right? And it helps you see the words as cognates of one another, all grouped, alphabetically according to the Hebrew alphabet. This one is the Ancient Hebrew Lexicon of the Bible by Jeff Benner, and it helps you to see the characters in their pictographic form and understand them in their agricultural context a little bit better in their cultural context. And so it's got a legend at the beginning to help learn the letters. But honestly, one of the best ways that you can learn this, if you want to dig in and really have biblical study, because it's probably one of the most profitable studies in the world, in terms of what you do with your time. It will make biblical study come alive to you. It will become tangible to you in a way that I don't think it ever was to me before I began doing this. And I definitely have to say I've dropped off, and I need to pick it up. I've dropped off a lot because I've been so otherwise occupied. But it is one of my favorite pastimes to really dig in and see things illuminate. I mean, I have these aha moments that just blow my mind, where I see usage of a particular term in one place and the usage of that same term or phrase in another place where they're relevant to one another. Now, I will tell you, there's other details in terms of linguistics behind understanding this language, but I would suggest to you that it's probably simpler than it's often made by academics and intellectuals. They're wonderful people. They're smart. They can do great things in studying and learning ancient languages and studying culture and archaeology, but there are limitations in that. Just like I would say Dr. Peterson, though he's got a great idea of studying the Bible from a psychological perspective, there are probably limitations there, and I think he would agree, right? That there's probably some limitation in understanding what's actually being said. But he's on the right track in that he recognizes there are multiple levels of meaning, right? That's helpful. You get away very easily from these fights between denominations about, well, it must mean this. Well, it's got to mean that. No. This verse is totally interpreted this way. Hold on. God said already that no scripture is of any private interpretation, right? That's already laid out very clearly. And then in the whole way that the language of Hebrew works, words and letters themselves lend themselves to being interpreted in more than one fashion based on the context, right? The context is not just the book or the chapter that you're in, it's the whole Bible, right? Constantly have to remind myself of that when we're reading Torah portions or we're reading a biblical, just one book, and we're digging into that day by day, my wife and I. We constantly come up on passages where we see God say something or do something, and we're like, that's pretty rough. That's harsh. It seems like that at the outset. It's hard to take that in. But then we have to keep in mind the whole context of the book, right? The entire book. And the whole context includes the character of God throughout, right? And so much of the time, his words and his actions are to act on behalf of people, right? That can't act for themselves, right? He has to do things to benefit others that they can't do for themselves. He's constantly working to do that for the people he's chosen, right? As his own, the people that have been faithful to him, at least in part, at least their ancestors were. Because of the faithfulness of their ancestors, he says, hey, I'm going to pick you as my people to take good care of throughout history. And a lot of these other peoples have just refused to go along with it. They have not maintained in their culture a connection with me. So sadly, that's the way it's gone. I'd love for them to come into the fold, but this is the fold, right? This is the way to continue in health, in keeping not only soundness of mind, but soundness of heart, soundness of body, in these ways that your people have been doing. And I'm going to tweak it. I'm going to get you back on the fully right path as much as I can. Little by little, we're going to keep knocking it back toward where I had it toward at the beginning, before people started doing stuff that I said, don't do that, that's a bad idea. Little by little, we're going to get it restored, right? Someone said, you can't have restoration without Torah, right? The word Torah is in the midst of the word restoration. And Torah is just a word that means to teach, right? To cast down instruction, like you cast down, like rain is cast down on plants that grow, and so that they can grow, because they don't grow very well without that casting down of the rain. And instruction is cast down on us for people that love us to help us grow, right? Uh, so let's see here. Yeah, hermeneutics is kind of an important thing. Audience relevance is an important thing. But dig in, read, learn, right? And don't be afraid to dig in and read and learn. Does it mean you might see something and maybe come up with an interpretation or something and understanding that might be off? Of course, we always can do that. But it doesn't mean that you're going to go up and start a snake handling church or something tomorrow. There's people that dig that. I get it. I understand, and I'm gonna not do that because I think that a fuller interpretation of what's talked about there would make it clear that God's not saying, "Hey, let's sit around and handle snakes to prove our faith." But then that's my view. I could be wrong. I doubt it, but I think I could be. I leave that open. The first church of the bear. Oh my goodness, that's awesome. What? No snakes? All right, come here, Chunk. Come here, Gita. Come here, Chunk. Come up here and say hi to the people for a minute. Say hi. Come here, Chunk. Chunk's such a good boy. And Gerber's a good dog puppy too. Yeah. We've got plenty to do today. These guys have all eaten, and I need to go back and take care of Sadie for a little bit and do some things for her. But yeah, I just wanted to talk briefly about those couple words. Ayin bet resh, aver, and ayin resh bet, erev. And how they're very close to each other, right? They're very close to each other, but you switch two letters, the meaning is fundamentally different, right? One is a term that means to be transitioned, to be changed from one thing to another, to cross over through adversity. That's some of what's talked about in that term in terms of the definition. And it was the name of that whole group of people, the Hebrews, right? The Ebers. That's the root word anyway, or Ivrit is Hebrews, is the plural. Dogs climbing all over the place. Yes, I know. You're a good puppy. So, here, why don't you just come all the way up? Here you go. Come on all the way up. There you go. The word Erev, right, is a term that means for things to be mixed, right? And mixed without integration, where things are still kind of not discernible. They're somewhat contaminated in that way. And it's also the term Erev or Arab, as we would say in modern English, is often in reference to people that are the enemies of the Hebrews. Very often they don't get along well. And I'm not making doctrinal points here. I'm just pointing out that these two words have a deeper history than we realize. Some of the conflict that we see today probably has roots that go further back, even linguistically, more than we have a way to comprehend. But maybe now we get at least a little touch of that. And what is my point in reference to what Ben was talking, or what Big Bear was talking about yesterday concerning Ben Shapiro? Not all people that call themselves Jews are Jews, right? I think that's a very important point. People in Hollywood that happen to be ethnically Jewish, that has nothing to do with being Jewish in the way that God understands it, right? And remember, Jews were one tribe out of the 12 tribes. Really, it's a baker's dozen. There's 13 because Joseph had two kids, Manasseh and Ephraim. And why is it failing me? Joseph had those two kids, Manasseh and Ephraim, and his father Jacob, right, before he died, adopted those two kids as his own, so they got inheritance of Jacob, just like the rest of the other kids that were his actual biological kids. So the 12 tribes get talked about often, but sometimes one tribe is not mentioned for different reasons. If they're going to war, then they won't mention Levi, because Levi was not supposed to go to war. That was the tribe of the priests, right? If Levi is mentioned in the procession, and how would they do that, right? How do they talk about the 12 tribes without Levi? They just talk about Joseph. By not saying Joseph, they can split it in half and say Manasseh and Ephraim, right? So you've still got the 12 talked about. Manasseh and Ephraim is Joseph, in a sense, because they come from him. So that you'll see this outplay a lot of different times, and this is very relevant stuff. But I had a better point to make. This not all, yeah. So Jews are one part of the whole nation, right? They're the more visible part that we have left, because after Solomon died, some time after that, his kids had a Jeroboam and Rehoboam had that split, and so now you've got 10 of the 12 tribes more congregated up in the northern parts of Israel. You've got Judah, Benjamin, and a little bit of Levi still down in the south, faithful to God to some degree, and even they kind of fall off the horse on that later on. But the other 10 tribes brought in so much idolatry and other idol worship and things of that nature that mixed, again, here's this mixing thing, mixed the worship of the God of the Bible with various other pagan deities. It mixed these things together. God said, no, not going to happen. I'm keeping my stuff pure, right? So those people got into a treaty with the Assyrians. The Assyrians broke that treaty, wiped them out, but didn't just really wipe them out. They took the people that they captured and forced them to intermarry with their people. That's where we get the Samaritans from, right? That you see in the New Testament often. That's why the Jews had such a rough time with them. They were like, no, we're not happy with them. Their ancestors basically said nuts to God, and that's what happens, like it's a snapped episode. That's what happens, right? So we've got, the visible part of Hebrews, the Jews, and some were Benjamites. Saul in the New Testament, or as we know in Paul, the apostle, was of the tribe of Benjamin, right? But considered himself a Jew, right? Because Jews would be of the tribe of Judah. How does that work? Because the Benjamin and the little bit of Levites that were left in the southern kingdom after that split. Hey, quit fighting with each other. They're children. They all consider themselves under the banner of Judah, right? So that's why Jews, right? But not all people that say they are of Jewish descendancy are what God would call Jews, right? So it's important that we make those distinctions, right? God finds distinction to be rather important. He gave copious amounts of instructions on how to live and how to create this chunk. Tell you what, bud, give me 5 minutes. He made specific instructions on how to build this tabernacle structure, on how to build the Ark of the Covenant, all these different little things that he told them to do. He's like, I want you to do this, and I want you to come to worship for me in a specific way, right? Detailed way. That sets it apart from anything else, right? I'm picking one day a week to be the Shabbat, or the Sabbath, right? To distinguish it from other days. It's a special day. I don't want you to just treat it commonly, right? To profane something. The word profane is often used really to mean common, right? To just treat something as common. Not that it's bad words like F word or something like that, or things like that. It's just that it's common, right? It's not set apart and made special, right? So God says, treat the things that should be treated special as special, right? Treat things that I give you as special, because that's important. And so making this distinction between Aver and Erev, right? Between being transitioned into something new and being being intermixed with other stuff where it's indistinguishable. It's like it's not integrated, right? So you don't have a clear thing. You don't have something clear and distinct. That's the opposite of what God wants to happen, at least as I read this. So take that for what you will. Take that for what you can understand about people who are true followers of God and people who are the Hollywood Democrats and governmental ones that are of Jewish background. And let's make sure we don't get it twisted so that we're not putting our frustration with the wrong people. People that have established a relationship with God, whether they understand that Jesus is the Messiah or not, I think are people that we should try to be close to, try to develop a relationship with, because there's some things they do right. There's some things that they figured out that I think are worthwhile. Chunk is like taking this bowl and he's throwing it with his mouth. He's picking up his mouth. He's like launching it. It was hilarious. I wish I'd caught that on video. It was so funny. Come here, Chunk. Come up here, bud. Come on, buddy. Come here. Come see Dad. You go see your daddy. Come on. Yeah. Thanks for not knocking my coffee over. I appreciate it. So funny. Look at these dogs. Look at these dogs. All right. All right. Enough of this mushy stuff. Distinction. It's a good thing. Engage your mind. Engage your body. Engage your heart. Seek to serve the ultimate purpose. I hope you bears have a great day. I love you all. Thanks for coming. And I'll see you mañana. Next time. Say bye.